We have Barrister Inibehe Effiong, who is a human rights lawyer. Welcome to SaharaTV.
Thank you for having me.
So, what should the Nigerian government's action be on the xenophobic attack?
The first thing I expect the Nigerian government to do is to make a strong statement that the killing of Nigerians, the destruction of the property of Nigerians, the sustained attack on Nigerians and other Africans in South Africa is intolerable and unacceptable, and that South Africa will pay a heavy price for the continuous killing of our people, and that the economic interest of South Africa in Nigeria cannot be guaranteed. What I am saying is that the federal government must clearly send a message of reciprocity to the government and people of South Africa that this madness has gone on for too long and that the time to stop it is now.
Do you support Nigerians who are saying they want to boycott South African companies in Nigeria?
Absolutely. We must have a way to respond to what has happened. We must have a way to register our protest, our remonstrance to the government and people of South Africa. It is interesting to note that by virtue of the investment of South Africa and South African companies in Nigeria, one can reasonably assert that Nigeria contributes remarkably to the GDP and the economy of South Africa. Take, for example, MTN alone. The billions of dollars that goes to South Africa from Nigeria, there are even more subscribers of MTN in Nigeria than in South Africa. The same thing also applicable for DSTV, for ShopRite, and other economic interests and investments of South African people in Nigeria. So we cannot continue to sit back and watch hopelessly while our citizens are being slaughtered, while the properties of Nigerians are being set on fire, while our people are being shot and killed, and while the South African government continues to sit and watch without taking drastic measures to protect Nigerians. It is important for the federal government of Nigeria, as a matter of urgency, as a matter of national urgency, to clearly reciprocate by way of diplomatic action what the South African government is doing. And I say South African government deliberately, because President Cyril Ramaphosa had clearly made xenophobia an integral part of his campaign by inciting the blacks in South Africa against Nigerians and other African nationals, by giving them the impression that it is their fellow black people that are responsible for the penurious state and the failure of the government of South Africa to cater for their people. You have also seen the video of the South African Minister for Police Affairs, who in his ignorance and blatantly arrogant attempts to justify the criminality that is being perpetuated against Nigerians, came out to say that, oh, you cannot have a city in South Africa where foreigners are 80% and locals are 20%. That begs the question, is it foreigners or Nigerians and other Africans in South Africa that are chasing South Africans out of the said city that you've mentioned? So what this clearly shows is that the government and people of South Africa are they are in unison in the criminality that is going on. So let nobody make an excuse that the attacks are isolated. As a matter of fact, from the comments I have seen and read on social media, I have come to the conclusion that what is going on in South Africa reflects the position and the thinking of the majority of people in South Africa. That is why the Nigerian government has to wake up to its responsibility to Nigerians. Because by virtue of Section 14 of the Constitution, the security and welfare of Nigerians is the primary purpose of government. both within Nigeria and outside Nigeria. So the federal government has an obligation, indeed the most important responsibility, to ensure that Nigerians are protected. The president cannot continue to sit idle in the villa. The government cannot continue to pretend that nothing is happening while our people are being killed by a country that Nigeria invested billions in salvaging from apartheid. So I am saying that the government of South Africa has to be held liable for what has happened. And there has to be repatriation, compensation, for every business and economic investment of Nigerians that have been destroyed by these criminals in South Africa. They have to compensate our people adequately. They must also account for the Nigerians who have been killed, for Nigerians who have been assassinated in South Africa. I expect by now that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs would have issued a travel advisory telling Nigerians that South Africa is not a place they should travel to, at least immediately. This hasn't been done. All we have heard is that the South African High Commissioner has been summoned. It is good that he has been summoned, but that is just begging the question. That is just window dressing. What we want to see is a drastic action. This foreign policy of being the big brother of Africa has to stop. Every country on earth, every civilized country today, has at the foundation of its foreign policy the protection of the interests of its citizens. Look at the United States. Since Trump came into power, you have seen what the American government is doing, even by way of tariffs and imposition of tariffs on China, even Japan, even the European Union. Trump is threatening also. Look, you saw what happened recently when the Nigerian government increased the cost of obtaining visa by Americans. The American government reciprocated. Nigeria was forced to retreat and reverse the increment. That clearly demonstrates a government that had the interest of its people at heart. But the Nigerian government has been grossly irresponsible. The Nigerian government has been indefensibly reluctant to attend to the yearnings of Nigerians. And you clearly see a sustained pattern of a president that is completely deaf to the cries of the people. Nigerians have been killed in Nigeria by Boko Haram, by the so-called bandits that they are now giving amnesty. Nigerians have been slaughtered. There have been no concerted effort by the federal government to protect Nigerians within Nigeria. This is what is emboldening a country like South Africa to have the audacity, the effrontery to treat Nigerians with so much contempt. Look, it is correct that there are Nigerians in South Africa who are committing crimes, but there are also South African criminals in Nigeria. There are South Africans who are committing crimes against the Nigerian state. There are South African companies in this country that are taking advantage of our people, that are violating our labor laws, that are indulging in all manners of criminality. Why haven't we attacked them? Why haven't our people burned down ShopRite? Because we are sensible people. Because we have respect for visitors and foreigners. Why are they treating us differently? The Nigerian government must clearly reject this kind of nonsense.
So how can Nigerians react in such a way they send a message to South African government?
The first thing Nigerians should do immediately is for us to clearly protest what has happened. This couldn't have happened in any country of consensus people, and the South African embassy will not be occupied by now. Why are we not protesting at the South African embassy to register our protest and our rejection of the criminality they are perpetuating against our people? It is not enough to talk on social media. Why can't we decide that for 1 week no Nigerian will go to ShopRite? Yes, Nigerians are the ones being employed there, but let us look at the bigger picture. The return on investment goes to South Africa. They only pay tax here. So if the economic interest of South Africa in Nigeria is not threatened, these people will not know that something is at stake. The Nigerian government can issue press statements till eternity. is not going to touch the South Africans. Because from all indications, there is now a clear ideology in South Africa to attack, demonize our people. So Nigerians have the right, constitutionally and legally, to boycott South African investment at least for 7 days. To send a message that the era of sitting idle and watch while Nigerians are being killed, while the economic investment of our people are being looted. I saw videos of people's shops being looted by criminals, people being attacked, people being killed, and they keep talking about Nigerians taking their jobs, which is absolute nonsense, because it has been established that 85% of the economy of South Africa, including the land, is in the hands of the white minority that constitute less than 10% of the South African population. So how can they say that Nigerians are responsible for their poverty? This is a case of misplaced aggression. So what I am saying is that the Nigerian government has to champion this. Not just within Nigeria. I expect the federal government, the president, to take leadership. The president of Nigeria by now would have engaged directly with the president of Gambia, the president of Kenya, the president of Ghana, and other African countries whose citizens are also victims of this xenophobic attack, to coordinate a regional and continental response to the criminality that is going on in South Africa. By way of imposition of sanctions, restriction of movement, I expect even the Nigerian ambassador to South Africa to be recalled. There has to be a strong response. Otherwise, this brutality will continue. And if we do not do something now, it will clearly continue to make nonsense of this country. Why are we the giant of Africa? In quote, when you have a country like South Africa looking down on us, taking us for a ride, yes, we have our internal issues within the country. But in times like this, we have to come together as Nigerians. Because those who are attacking foreigners in Nigeria, in South Africa, they don't know Igbo, they don't know Yoruba, they don't know Hausa, they don't know Ibibio. They just know Nigerians and foreigners. They're not interested in the tribe. So let the president not say because cows are not being killed, Nigerian cows or cattle are not being killed in South Africa, therefore it's not being concerned. Because we have a president that has clearly shown a stronger affinity and love for cattle than human beings. And I say that with all sense of responsibility. When you see the way the president has responded when cows are being attacked, when the interest of herdsmen is being threatened, you have a president that personally, he put on his military camouflage and went to constitute a task force against cattle rustling to protect cattle. You have a president that has introduced Ruga. You have a president that has come up with all manner of palliatives and policies for the purpose of guaranteeing the safety and the welfare of cattle and cattle headers. But the same president has embarrassingly, shamefully sat back when Nigerians are being slaughtered. So I am submitting that we cannot allow this to continue. President Buhari has a responsibility to let the people of South Africa know that this madness has to stop. I also expect the National Assembly to reconvene immediately to address what is going on. I understand the Speaker of the House of Reps has given indication that there is a discussion to reconvene. That decision has to be taken immediately. Let the National Assembly pass resolution mandating the executive to take certain drastic action, some of which I have highlighted. If we have to nationalize one South African company, to let them know that this criminality is unacceptable, so be it. Because the way the world has evolved today, reciprocity is the number one law of diplomatic relations. We are not going to sit back and allow this to continue. Otherwise, tomorrow, another African country can continue to kill our people. You saw how President Buhari and the federal government acted expeditiously to rescue the young lady who we are told was innocently accused of drug trafficking in Saudi Arabia. This was one Nigeria. The entire institutions of state, from immigration to the foreign affairs to the presidency, everybody were on their toes to rescue one Nigerian from being killed in Saudi Arabia. It was a good thing, and commendably so. But why have we not seen the similar response in this case? Why? Why have we not seen the federal government acting in the same manner regarding Nigerians who are being killed? This thing didn't just happen yesterday. The killings have been going on. And the government has been tolerant. The government has been overtly defending what the South Africans are doing. We saw our president during their recent summit in Japan, smiling with the president of South Africa. But beyond the smile, what did he say? Did he tell him to his face that Nigeria will not accept any Nigerian being killed again? That Nigeria will not accept the shock of the business interest of any Nigerian being attacked? We did not see that. So what I am saying is that we have a government that has clearly shown incompetence, a government that is clueless, a government that has shown a lack of commitment and passion to protect the lives of our people. And that is why these people can afford to take us for a ride. But another point I want to make quickly is that yes, while we have to fight to protect our interests abroad, we need to tell ourselves the honest truth. This could not have happened if we have a responsible country. If we have a country that has value for its citizens. If we have a country that will create jobs for Nigerians. If we have a country that has a conducive environment for investment. Who will want to go abroad? But today, all indices are in the negative. I was just reviewing the recent statistics released by the National Bureau of Statistics that shows this morning that the GDP in Nigeria is sliding backward. The economic indices is getting worse by the day. So we have a country that is not responsible, whose leaders are totally nonchalant, whose leaders are complicit. We have a country that does not care about the welfare of the people. So if we must be respected abroad, we must also be respected at home. The South Africans are aware that the Nigerian police, for example, are killing Nigerians on a daily basis without consequences. So when you have Nigerians being slaughtered in their own country by those who are paid to protect them, when we have clearly seen an established culture of impunity, citizens now being arrested on top-up charges, we now have political prisoners in Nigeria. We now have groups being proscribed as terrorist organizations, people being accused of terrorism simply on account of dissent. That is not a respectable country. There is no way foreigners will respect us when we don't respect ourselves. So we need to have an honest conversation about this country. The reason why somebody in South Africa can afford to talk down, to denigrate, to undermine Nigerians is because they know we have an irresponsible government. It is because they know the kind of country that we have. So let us also be blunt in indicting ourselves for the position we have found ourselves today. If this has to stop, if Nigerians must stop dying in the Mediterranean Sea, if Nigerians must stop dying in trying to get to Libya, trying to go to South Africa, if Nigerians, few Nigerians, must stop going to South Africa to engage in illicit crime, there has to be a country for them. As of today, there is no country for our people. What you have is a crime scene. Nigeria has become a crime scene. Criminality has taken over the country. And the politicians are recklessly and irresponsibly unconcerned. The National Assembly, for example, despite the economic downturn, is proposing to buy vehicles with billions of naira at a time that the country is the poverty capital of the world. So how can South Africans respect us? When you have a president that does not listen, a president that regards the constitution as a piece of paper, as a useless piece of paper, a president that has no regard for human rights, a president that sat back and watched child being slaughtered and killed, members of IPOB being slaughtered and killed, a president under whose regime journalists are being arrested, Showore and others, Abba Janingo, all over the country, and is totally unconcerned. So, what do you want the South Africans to do? They know who we are. They know our weakness. So while we are fighting South Africa at the diplomatic level, we must also have a conversation about this country. And let me also say that in addressing the killings of Nigerians in South Africa, we must also clearly defend the economic interests of the poor people of Nigeria in this country. Because when you have a situation where people are not guaranteed of the basic needs of life, when people are merely existing and not living, there is nowhere foreigners can respect us. And the painful part is that South Africans in Nigeria are more respected than Nigerians in Nigeria. South African companies, look at even the way they treat our people. There's a case I was doing in this office for somebody. The young man was going to school abroad. He had to pass to South Africa. To South African Airways. When he got to South Africa, he was deported back to Nigeria. Simply on account that they claimed that there was a discrepancy on his travel documents. Whereas there was no such discrepancy. But even before they look at his paper, they had taken him aside to say, Nigerians, stand here. He had already been discriminated against. They brought him back. When I now wrote a letter to the South African Airways, demanding apology and compensation, they refused to respond. I now wrote to NACA. Till today, the Nigerian government has not done anything about the case of that young man. So when you have our people being neglected like this, when you have Nigerians being treated with contempt and ridicule at the airports and all over the world, we need to be honest with ourselves. Our government has failed us. And the time has come for us to reclaim this country. The time has come for Nigerians to rise up. That's why we are talking about revolution. Because this culture of impunity, this culture of disregard for Nigerians cannot stop if we don't reclaim our country from these economic buccaneers who are clearly on a mission to take whatever is left. And look, let me tell you, the president is not bothered. He can afford to send his children abroad. You have a Senate president who came out to say that the Senate will not fail Buhari. What an insult to Nigerians. This is the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria that is supposed to be committed to the interests of Nigerians. And somebody is saying will not fail the president. A supposedly independent arm of government. So the institutions of states have failed us. So what I'm saying is that beyond outcry on social media that can whistle out in a number of days, beyond the occasional outrage on Twitter and Facebook, we, the people, must now reclaim our country. And the only way to do that is through mass movements. We must begin to engage the Nigerian state. We must begin to demand more from our politicians. The president should not be comfortable. How do you have a country that this kind of criminality is being perpetrated against its citizens abroad, and the president has not even addressed a press conference? I'm not talking about Dabike Arewa tweeting whatever she likes on Twitter. That is not a response. I'm not talking about the Minister of Foreign Affairs making statements on social media. That is not a response. The president should have personally addressed a World Press Conference. We see this even in the United States, in Russia and everywhere. When their citizens are threatened abroad, the highest leadership of the country will come out to respond. Not even the vice president has said anything. And you say these people are interested in our welfare? I don't think so.
Thank you very much. So what is your advice to Africans in South Africa?
I don't think they should leave South Africa. I don't think so. I do not think Africans should leave South Africa. Except we are going to war. And we have to bring back our people. And the foreigners in quotes. Because I cannot understand why Africans should be referred to as foreigners in Africa. And these people are not good students of history. It was in the Berlin Conference that Africa was partitioned by the West purely for economic interest. Prior to that time, Africa was one people. So why are we calling fellow blacks foreigners? Why are the Chinese, the Indians in South Africa not being attacked? These are the people that control the commanding heights of the South African economy. Why are the whites not being threatened? Why are black people now the ones hating their fellow black people? So if we have to tell Nigerians in South Africa to come back home, are we also going to ask South Africans in Nigeria to go back to South Africa? After we have invested so much, some of these people are staying legitimately in South Africa, most of them. So if we are saying that Africans in South Africa should go back to their various countries, we must also be ready to ensure that no South African man is found in Nigeria. There is no other way. Otherwise, if they come back to Nigeria, some of them who have already suffered over the years to establish themselves, we are asking them to come back. What provision are we making for them? Where are they going to stay and live? Some of them have lived all their life in South Africa. Some of them are even married to South Africans. So if we are going to displace them on account of the criminality that is going on against our people, we must also reciprocate it. I will only agree to Nigerians coming back to Nigeria if and only if we are going to nationalize all South African companies in Nigeria. If we are not going to nationalize all the South African companies and economic interests in Nigeria, there is no way our people should come back. The South African government must protect Nigerians in South Africa at all costs. And if they fail, there must be consequence. Serious punitive price to pay. Otherwise, I can never support the suggestion that Nigerians should return home. Because there are South Africans in Nigeria being protected by the Nigerian police, paid by taxpayers' money. There are South African companies in Nigeria. And they are even seen here as expatriates. You can imagine the nonsense. They are treated as first-class citizens in our own country. And our people are being slaughtered. And you are saying Nigerians should come back? What South Africans will remain in Nigeria? No. Let the federal government clearly register its disapproval of what has happened. And let South Africa pay a heavy price. But if they refuse, let the worst happen. Let Nigerians come back. Let every South African in Nigeria be sent back. Let us nationalize all the economic investment and see who will lose more. How much does Nigeria even have? What stake do we have in the economy of South Africa? Look, they are the ones to lose. We have very little to lose. You can imagine if we nationalize MTN and ShopRite alone. If you even have DSTV to eat, what do Nigerians own in South Africa? Small shops. So if we have to get to the war, South Africa will lose. That's my position.
Thank you very much, Barrister. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.